About 2 years ago, I played Silent Hill 2 for the first time ever. Aside from being vaguely familiar with the game, I knew next to nothing about it, or the franchise in general. Silent Hill has always been this mystical piece of media to me, one that was revered by people around me, but one that I would never get the opportunity to explore myself. When that opportunity presented itself to me, however, I dove in head first. And when I say this with full authenticity. Silent Hill 2 has changed the way I look at media. Every movie has a scene that reminds me of it. Every game I play has to go toe-to-toe with this unbeaten champion. I was driving to work a few months ago in the heaviest fog I had ever seen, and all I could think of was, man, this is just like Silent Hill. Pretty soon, I was all in on this franchise. I finished the rest of the numbered entries, all of which were satisfying additions to the series. I even played the Silent Hill 2 remake that came out in 2024 on day one. It goes without saying that I can't get enough of Silent Hill. Lucky for me, once I finished all these games, there were another 3 mainline games from this franchise that I still had to play, most of which are generally viewed negatively. After Silent Hill 4, the franchise's original creators, Team Silent, were disbanded by Konami. It's hard to imagine why this would be. Silent Hill 1 through 4 are largely considered to be masterpieces, flaws and all. Konami, however, was looking to take the franchise in a different direction. Every game after Silent Hill 4 would be developed by a Western developer instead. Silent Hill always received more favor in the West than it did in Japan, but the reasons that Konami made this decision are still, to this day, unclear. What this resulted in was the development of 3 new games: Origins, Homecoming, and Downpour. The Silent Hill franchise isn't like other survival horror games. Sure, it has similar mechanics to other franchises, but outside of that, it feels novel. A lot of this has to do with the reliance on more psychological horror themes. These differ from what is seen in most Western horror games in being more atmospheric and focused on building tension through the environment. To me, the horror in Silent Hill is one that is sustained throughout the entire game. The suspense carries from hallway to hallway, from room to room, usually not even resulting in the payoff of a big jump scare like we see in other scary games. Western horror games can deliver this feeling as well, but Western Silent Hill games struggle to bring the horrors present in the previous games to life. And even when they do, they struggle to bring new additions to the series that make the games interesting enough to stand next to the Team Silent games. I love Silent Hill, but what I love even more is when developers try to do new things. It helps keep things fresh instead of playing the hits over and over again. That comes with a caveat though. When those differences are too significant, it takes away from what made the IP great in the first place. I applaud Climax, Double Helix, and Vatra for taking on this almost impossible task of making good games for this series, but that doesn't mean that they're absolved from criticism. At a base level, I feel that these studios don't understand Silent Hill, from the story to the combat to even smaller things like sound design, and by injecting Western influences into it, stray away from what made the series great to begin with. And I played these games for way too long, so I really need to complain about them.
It's bland. I mean, that is depressing.
If Silent Hill 2 is a perfect cut of Wagyu beef, Silent Hill Origins is like a ribeye steak. Like, it's fine, but it's not gonna blow you away. Origins is actually the game that I give the most grace out of the bunch. Development for this game was extremely rough. It was passed around Climax Studios so many times for a handful of reasons, mostly due to trouble with the game engine. Because of this game is very similar to the original Silent Hill games, especially Silent Hill 1. And that's where I'm torn about this game. On one hand, it feels like the last breath of Team Silent, even though they didn't really work on this game. It's filled with similar design, well-known characters, everything you would expect from a Silent Hill game. It's like a posthumous album for Team Silent. But on the other hand, it's so similar to those games that it almost feels like it's Achilles' heel. In comparison to the other games released after 4, this thing is a goddamn masterpiece. In comparison to the games that it's most similar to though, it feels phoned in. like they ran out of ideas and had to make the most basic Silent Hill game that they could. It suffers from the opposite of the problem that I described earlier. It doesn't push the needle in any regard, making it feel like it's not worth playing at all. When I first found out that Origins was, go figure, a prequel, I was really excited. There are a lot of unanswered questions about the cult in Silent Hill that I thought the game was going to take the opportunity to answer, but it doesn't. Instead, Silent Hill Origins takes the liberty of showing us events that we were told about in Silent Hill 1 and 3. It doesn't introduce anything new to the series outside of Travis. Travis is the main character of the story, and he falls into a weird middle group of Silent Hill protagonists. In previous games, the main character is called the Silent Hill because of some connection to the cult or to receive some form of punishment. Travis is neither of these. He has a connection to Silent Hill, but not to the cult itself. And what this leads to is an A and a B plot that never really intersect. In the A plot, Travis is exploring this connection to Silent Hill, that being it's the place where Travis's father did something and his mother was institutionalized. In the B plot, we have the Order doing rituals that would have effects in the later games. While both of these stories could be interesting, Climax doesn't do a great job with either. Origins mainly focuses on Travis's backstory, and while it is slightly intriguing, it doesn't have the stakes to make it anywhere near as impactful as the previous games. There is little to no mystery involved with it. If you have eyes to see and ears to hear, you'll figure out what happened to Travis's dad pretty quickly. Meanwhile, in the B plot, the cult is doing incredibly important things for the lore of Silent Hill. Off screen.
Dude, that job we just went up to him, the one we just got back from, that was probably the coolest and craziest and most fun adventure we've ever gone on.
Travis does play a role in the cult's story by manifesting the pieces used to reincarnate Alessa into Cheryl, but it's never explained why or how he's involved in this. In Silent Hill 1 and 3, Harry and Heather's stories work because of their direct ties to the cult. The stakes are set early in both of their stories, and while sparse, the game does a good job explaining why they are involved in the first place. Travis is just kind of a guy who unknowingly sets the whole story in motion. No Silent Hill protagonist is exactly a professional detective or a cult expert who knows exactly what's going on, but Travis has to be the most clueless out of all of them, and for good reason. Everyone is being so cryptic in this game. I was confused too.
Finally, she will birth God!
What the hell are you talking about?
Again, this game went through a lot of iterations and rewrites, as well as being the first removed from Team Silent, so I can understand not wanting to take too many creative liberties with the lore of the Order. But if that's the case, maybe it's best not to focus on the cult at all. Silent Hill 2 and 4 are considered to be two of the best stories in the entire franchise, and while they are loosely tied to the cult, they focus on other thematic elements, which is why people love them so much. Origins could have been a great opportunity to do the same thing if it wasn't held back by so many factors. Most of what I like about this game is removed from the narrative entirely. In fact, the Team Silent aspects of gameplay are what made this game halfway decent. What stands out the most to me is the map design of this game. The levels feel like a real return to form for Silent Hill after Silent Hill 4, in my opinion, dropped the ball in this regard. For such a small game, these levels feel huge and fleshed out, at least in comparison to 1, 2, and 3. I even like how they handled the Otherworld in this game. Instead of having levels have two parts, an overworld and a nightmare section, the Otherworld is integrated into the level, allowing you to jump between the two sections whenever you want, letting you do some pretty interesting things with puzzle solving and navigation. The biggest compliment that I can give this feature is that it never got tedious. In 4, returning to your apartment felt like a slog at times, but this seems like a much more fleshed out version of that. Instead of dreading having to go back to my apartment because it felt clunky and slow, I dreaded going into the Otherworld because it's scary, and I don't wanna. The combat in this game also isn't that bad. It's very comparable to the previous games with the exception of the melee weapons selection. While in 1 through 4 you have a handful of weapons to choose from, Origins gives you a million weapons, all of which have durability. They range from axes and hammers to more interesting options like katanas and toasters, all of which you can just ignore because this is the first Silent Hill game with hands. That doesn't really matter either though, because they just end up giving you an assault rifle with 100 rounds anyway. But an interesting choice made by Climax is to add stamina to this game. It doesn't really impact combat that much, but when you're running around Silent Hill, it can get really annoying really fast. For a genre of game that is so focused on avoiding enemies, adding something that makes that more annoying to do does put a little bit of a damper on things. Imagine if Leon Kennedy ran out of gas. It's no different here. Luckily, the enemies in this game don't make the stamina meter that much of a problem. Combat in Silent Hill has always been controversial. It's very hard for these games to find a balance between enemies being too aggressive and plentiful or too passive and sparse. Enemy design is a big factor in this. Silent Hill 3 and 4 enemies are probably the toughest in the series in my opinion. They're fast, tanky, and honestly overpopulated. The original Silent Hill is the opposite. There are some threats, but overall, the combat in that game is a bit too simple to be stressful, at least to modern standards. Origins is a perfect balance between these. There's a handful of halls that get crowded, forcing you to fight, and a couple of enemies that are annoying to deal with, but overall, it's a very balanced game. Combat never felt frustrating, but it absolutely had its tense moments. When it comes to the atmosphere of Origins, this is another area where the use of Silent Hill 1 as a major source for the design is a positive for this game in some respects. If you like the industrial style Otherworld in 1 and 3, you'll love this one because it's more of the same. It's just as effective at making you feel uneasy as it is in the other games, and it's also cool to see what is essentially the Silent Hill 1 map with upgraded graphics. In the same way I was amazed at the graphics for Silent Hill on the PS1, I was amazed that they could make a game look this good on the PSP. That being said, the creature design in this game is pretty subpar. Enemies in Silent Hill usually have some heavy theming around them related to the story in some way. This is mostly absent in Origins, with assets used in the previous games being used for most of the enemies in this. The nurses, the lying figures, they're all stuff that we've seen. The Butcher is basically Pyramid Head with less symbolism. Again, this is likely due to messy development, but it leaves something to be desired regardless. I think that actually sums up my thoughts on Origins pretty well. Something to be desired. While I don't think that this is a bad game, it's not one that left me thinking about it for weeks like the others did. To a certain extent, I have a great appreciation for this game and for Climax. They faced a lot of adversity during the production of this and were able to put out a project that could have easily been far worse. But that doesn't mean that this game is exempt from criticism. If I had to rank this, I would probably put this game just below the original saga, but not by that much. If you like Silent Hill and want a quote-unquote new experience, this is definitely worth playing. It's like 5 hours long. It took me like 2 days. Overall, this was not that bad of an experience. I wish I could say the same for the next game.
The gods of Olympus have abandoned me.
This game is $40 on Steam. $40. Is it worth $40?
No.
Silent Hill Homecoming was an absolutely horrible experience, both as a Silent Hill game and as a video game in general. Let's focus on the latter to start. Silent Hill Homecoming is, in all honesty, a poorly made product. Plain and simple. There are very few redeeming qualities to this game that I can think of. For a series so renowned for its sound design, things truly could not be worse than they are in this game. Akira Yamaoka is the composer for this game's OST, but this isn't exactly his best work. To be honest, I think this game has the worst soundtrack in the series to this point. In other Silent Hill games, the music can sometimes take over whatever you're doing. Not because what you're doing is boring, but because the music is so good. But in this, it just fades into the background rather than being something that contributes to the atmosphere as a whole. Sometimes, at least. There's a lot of awkward moments where the music will just stop in the middle of a boss fight or an important cutscene. I don't like this game. Where'd the music go? He's been doing this for 6 games now. He needs a break, I guess. But it's not just the music in this game that's bad. It's the sounds of it in general. Silent Hill's ambience is what defines it as a franchise, what sets it apart from every other survival horror game. For this game to feel so sterilized in that regard holds it back mightily. And this criticism applies to all aspects of the game, including the dialogue exchanges. Half the time, it sounds like the two characters having a conversation were recorded in different rooms on completely different microphones.
Where's Josh?
I don't know.
At first, I thought the audio files on my copy were bad, but no, that's just how it sounds. And as hard as these voice actors and actresses try, they cannot save this screenplay. Let me quickly summarize this plot for you. In 1990, the film Jacob's Ladder was released in... Oh, wait, no, that's the wrong one. Hold on. There we go. In 2001, Silent Hill 2 was released on Sony's PlayStation 2. Silent Hill has always been a franchise that has worn its inspirations on its sleeve. Jacob's Ladder was even cited as a major inspiration for the games by Team Silent. There's a difference between using inspiration to make a new story and rehashing used ideas though, and Homecoming feels like one of the most creatively bankrupt pieces of fiction that I've ever had the joy of consuming. I don't want to say this game doesn't have a single original idea, but when I really struggle to think of one when going over the game's plot in my head, that's not a good sign. The main issue is that those original ideas, if there are any, don't make themselves apparent because those major plot points are taken from other things, mainly Silent Hill 2. Let me just hit some bullet points real quick. The main character is a man with little backstory who comes to Silent Hill in search of a loved one who, spoiler, died at their hands. They repress the memory and go through the entire game thinking they were on a journey to save this person. Both characters experience some sort of punishment by watching the people they love die repeatedly, often at the hands of a triangle-headed man. Both characters overcome their guilt by defeating a monster resembling or containing their loved one. Even the imagery is reused from Silent Hill 2 at certain points. And just because the story is eerily similar to Silent Hill 2 doesn't mean that it's the same quality. Homecoming is incredibly predictable. Mary works because she defies horror tropes by actually being dead, which you know from the start. When Homecoming does the opposite with Josh, that's when it feels tired and tropey. Oh yeah, the accident. I wonder what happened there. I think the biggest disappointment for me story-wise is the fact that Alex isn't actually a veteran. It's revealed late in the game that Alex was actually in a mental hospital, not away at war, which buried any expectation that this game was going to do something unique. Silent Hill has never shied away from covering serious topics, and a game about PTSD and veteran mental health would have been a really interesting idea that would have fit really well into the series. They already copied the Jacob's Ladder hospital scene. I don't know why they don't just copy the entire plot. After I beat this game, I just started to think that it doesn't understand Silent Hill. What got this thought rolling was the fact that you can get the UFO ending on your first playthrough. What used to be an Easter egg for people who played through the game multiple times is now open to anyone on their initial save. Imagine this was your first Silent Hill game and how confusing it would be to get this. And it's not even hard, you just have to make the right set of choices. And that's the other thing this game allows you to do. Make choices. Where endings used to be defined by vague actions that you take throughout the game that don't have clear consequences at first, this game puts it all out there for you. I wonder if killing my mother is going to impact this game's outcome. Curious. This game feels like they just made a bad horror game and shoehorned a bunch of stuff so they could slap Silent Hill on the cover. A big tell for this is the horror in this game. Remember the Bowley Mansion in Silent Hill 3, the haunted house that made fun of Western horror tropes? This game uses those bad horror tropes over and over again. Cheap jump scares, unnecessary gore, needless exposition. It feels so basic in comparison to the rest of the series. You can shift into the other world all you want, mention the Order as many times as you can, but that isn't what makes a Silent Hill game. When the atmosphere and tension are as lacking as they are in this entry, there's no point in even trying to put it up against the Team Silent games. All that being said, maybe this game can be a step forward for Silent Hill. It's the first of the series on the 9th generation of consoles and has a full third-person camera. Yeah, the story sucks, but maybe this can still be a technical achievement for Silent Hill. Oh. Never mind. As much as I hate this story, I despise this game's combat. Homecoming, despite its supposed upgrade from the previous games, is the most frustrating combat system that I have ever played. I don't even hate the fact that it has a dodge or new movement, I just wish that they worked. It's both incredibly easy to cheese while also being inexplicably hard at certain points. The dodge is either the most powerful move in the game or doesn't work at all. Sometimes enemies will die in 2 hits, other times they can take minutes to take down. And even when you do get guns, the melee combat is still your only option sometimes because you can only carry a few bullets. And you're really gonna want those bullets because enemies in this game are ridiculous. Some are fine, the needlers are whatever. Some I don't really understand. This version of what looks like to be a lying figure really confuses me. Why do I take damage from you sometimes and not others? Do you get damaged when your chest isn't open? I'm walking blindfolded here. I have no idea what is going on. And then some are just broken. The nurses have always been hard. That is no secret. But can someone please tell me why I'm getting pieced up so hard? You can't even dodge when they do this. You just have to endure the spin cycle. You also cannot imagine my disappointment when I found out you fight normal people in this game. There's a lot of things that I don't want from a Silent Hill game. Getting shot is number one. I don't want to chalk this up to Western developers thinking that more is better when it comes to game design, but that kind of seems like what's going on. Every Silent Hill game, starting with Origins, introduces a new layer to combat that ranges from unnecessary and weird to atmosphere destroying and frustrating. I understand the desire to push a franchise forward when the other games around you are doing such, but that comes with the caveat that you need to understand why the games prior to it were considered good. Silent Hill wasn't a hit because it had heart-pounding combat. It was everything else that made those games great. Combat was just a necessary addition to support this. If I was going to give Homecoming credit somewhere, it would be that it made me appreciate what Bloober Team and Neobards did with the Silent Hill 2 remake and Silent Hill F that much more. For games that resemble each other somewhat closely gameplay-wise, the newer developers did an incredible job making it feel natural and less frustrating than this, while maintaining an atmosphere that upholds what we've traditionally seen from Silent Hill. This game is an absolute nightmare. If you want to appreciate the classic Silent Hill games, give this a shot because it's going to make you wish that you could have scored Eileen across the entire game all over again. I had low expectations going in, but I never could have imagined what I endured to finish this game. And what sucks is it doesn't get much better.
Oh, that's bad.
Oh, it's bad.
Oh, that's bad.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I've played over 40 hours of Silent Hill games in the past 3 weeks, so by the time I got to this point, I was kinda sick of this. That being said, I tried to go into Downpour with a positive attitude. It's the worst rated Silent Hill game, but there were apparently a lot of launch issues that made the game's scores tank. So I wanted to be gracious and give this game a good shake. And the result of that is, this game is not very good. It's not terrible, but it's still not very good. The majority of the issues I have with Downpour are related to gameplay, however. Narratively and aesthetically, I think this game has a lot of really cool ideas. During development, the writers wanted to create a story similar in style to Silent Hill 2, disconnected from the cult, which I was all for. And no, this game isn't nearly as good as Silent Hill 2, but I can at least give it props for trying something new. I think Murphy being a prisoner is an interesting angle to take on a story like this. James was made to be sympathetic at the beginning of his game, but the player is given a reason to be skeptical of Murphy in Downpour right off the bat. This allowed for interesting character building and development that we really haven't seen in a Silent Hill game, especially in the Western ones. I feel like Murphy has much more depth in comparison to characters like Alex or even Henry. I've also always loved the trope of the main character being the villain or antagonist in someone else's story, and Downpour tries to implement this throughout the entire game. I don't think it lands perfectly all the time, but it's still executed in a way that is narratively interesting. Making you the final boss is a cool idea and helps bring the push-pull relationship between Murphy and Anne throughout the game full circle. You know that Murphy has done bad things, and seeing those come to light and how they affected other people was enough to push me through the game in spite of all the issues I have with it. It's not perfect, obviously. Characters are underdeveloped, the plot can be a little dull at times, but it's serviceable and different enough for me to give it a pass. I also think this game tries to emulate the weirdness that we saw in the early Silent Hills. People like the mailman and the DJ are strange, and while they don't have the same presence that people like Kaufman and Eddie do, they serve the purpose the game intended them to. That being said, the westernness of these Silent Hill games really comes through in Downpour. Take the toned down, subtle style from the first 4 Silent Hill games and compare them to Downpour and Homecoming. Both of these games use things to increase tension that the first 4 didn't have. They emphasize combat more, they include things like chase sequences, they use more jump scares than the original games, they take away the lack of exposition that gave the original series its mystery. There was far more focus on the atmospheric aspects of Silent Hill with Team Silent. They wanted to build environments and situations that felt like threats. They crafted horror that felt organic, while this feels very procedural, like they're trying to check all the boxes of things that are supposed to be scary. Downpour does its best to bring Silent Hill back to its roots, but those Western influences inevitably seep in. Things in this game are said explicitly rather than subtextually all the time. It's like that one moment in the original Silent Hill 2 where James kills Eddie and just goes, "I killed a human being." Like, yeah, man, we know, we watched. Now, imagine that being the dialogue for 10 hours. Like in the Forgiveness ending, where they basically tell you everything you should know at this point about Murphy and his situation. This game has a show don't tell attitude, but even after doing that, they decide to tell you everything anyway. Other than the few things I like about this story though, I don't have many nice things to say about this game. And the meanest thing that I have to say is, oh my god, this is the worst design game I have ever played. I know people get up in arms over yellow paint, but if a game ever needed it before, it's this one. Buckets of it. This game has an option to highlight interactable objects, which I obviously had switched on. So, tell me why it is nearly impossible for me to find anything in this game. I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I'm going to anyway. I went pretty much this entire game without being able to find a single map or gun for the majority of it. Two things that are pretty important in a Silent Hill game. While other Silent Hills will just post it close to the entrance of the dungeon you're entering, Downpour has this fun idea to tuck them away in areas you might not even know you can enter. You can completely miss the town map at the beginning of this game because it's in one of these areas that you can only find if you're being really thorough. Maybe I'm stupid, or maybe my brain is just fried from playing all of these games back to back to back, but I can tell you that I have played all of these games and hundreds of hours of survival horror games overall, and I never had this problem before. It could just be flaws with the level design though. Take, for example, this environmental puzzle. Here, you're supposed to take the lighter fluid, dump it on a pile of trash, and set off the fire alarm so the emergency exit opens. Simple enough, there are plenty of puzzles like this in the other games. On top of that, there are only a few rooms to even look in. Surely this will only take a few minutes. Right? This puzzle wasn't hard because I didn't know what to do. It was because I couldn't find the pile of trash. Again, I had highlight interactable objects on. When I finally found it, I quickly discovered why it took me so long though. Not only did the trash not highlight unless I stood on top of it, but it was the exact same trash texture that they have used multiple times throughout the game. Like here, Downpour is filled with design mistakes like this. Puzzles are never challenging because they're difficult puzzles. They're difficult because the game does a poor job explaining what to do. What supplements this frustration is the combat. I don't know what's worse, this or Homecoming. On one hand, the enemies in Homecoming are annoying because they can lock you into combos that you have no way of getting out of because the dodge button only works half the time. But at least that game has a dodge button. I certainly don't like the combat in Homecoming, but it's much more dynamic than the hit and run style I had to use in Downpour. It feels like I'm playing chicken here. But at least you have a ranged option with the melee weapons in this game because you can throw things. It sucks. I don't know what it is, but these non-fixed camera games just could not figure out how to make combat work. I guess there really wasn't a framework to base it off of for horror games at this time, but you have to think that the people that QA tested this said something, right? Did they really think that this was fun? I would be remiss if I didn't mention the enemies in this game. The design still sucks, that's no surprise, but I want to talk about their movement and behavior specifically. This game has the enemies move in ways that just make me laugh. Some of them are super stiff, others move like Street Fighter characters, and others just walk in ways that are supposed to be scary, but kind of just look like that moment in Transformers 1 when Optimus Prime first lands on Earth. Even Homecoming was able to make the creatures move in ways that was at least not distractingly bad. The other part of combat in this game are the chase sequences. These aren't bad like the regular combat, they're more so just boring. I guess I can give them props for making them decently easy to navigate, but that doesn't make them good. I think the best part about them is hearing Murphy's voice actor's entire scream library. It'll look like nothing is happening on the screen and he'll just start shrieking. That being said, I don't think the voice acting in this game is that bad. Most of what brings it down is, again, the sound design. Just like Homecoming, it sounds like some people were just recorded in different rooms. It also doesn't help that this is the only Silent Hill game not composed by Akira Yamaoka. David Leck did a fine job, but he had some tough shoes to fill, and this is not going to cut it.
Now, I do pattern, I go sit.
And you're going to be hearing this song a lot because yes, this game is open world. Downpour released in 2012, which was around the era where everything had to be open world in order to sell a single copy. Silent Hill has had some free roam sections in the past, but Downpour is the first to actively fill this world with more than just items to collect. Yeah, this game has side quests, and no, none of them are good. Side quests usually help build the world and make the setting more interesting, but in Downpour, most of the side quests that are worth doing just make the game less annoying. There's a police car that follows you around the entire game if you don't do the side quest to disable it. It doesn't even do anything, it's just really loud and makes your screen go black when it gets too close. There's also a mission to unlock the subway in this game, so you don't have to traverse the town. That was the reason people like these games in the first place. Where in the old games you might find some extra ammo or notes that you can put together a side story with if you do some additional poking around, this game, again, presents its material in a way that's too obvious to miss. Instead of focusing on creating a great atmosphere on a small scale and specific spots that every player can see, they spread it all out to make the world way bigger than it needs to be. That's another aspect of Western development, the desire to keep up with everyone else. Instead of having your own niche that you're really good at, it seems that Western studios have this habit of needing to add a big new thing to their game, even if it doesn't fit or is as fleshed out as it needs to be. When stuff like this is shoehorned into a game, it's not because it makes it better, it's because it's just another buzzword to use in the marketing. It really is a shame that this is the game that killed the franchise, but it's easy to see why it did. You can see the good stuff that was present from the first Silent Hill games rear its head in this, but it's overshadowed by the aspects that made the other Western games before it worse. But if anything, it's probably a good thing this game did poorly, because if it hadn't, we wouldn't be in the position we are with Silent Hill today. We've entered a new era of Silent Hill. Just this past year, we got the first major release from the franchise since 2012 with the Silent Hill 2 remake, which not only did well critically, but commercially as well. It put Silent Hill on the screens of people who wouldn't have been able to access it or weren't interested in playing these games if they weren't presented in the way it was, which I think is an overall good for the series. What I think is even better though is that we got the first major release of an original Silent Hill game just a few weeks ago with Silent Hill F. It's far from perfect, but it shows that this franchise still has the ability to tell an intriguing story that hasn't been told before. Most importantly, both of these games are a major step forward for the third-person style of Silent Hill games, which, admittedly, wouldn't have been possible without these games. As rough as they are, the Western Silent Hill games helped pave the way for these two games to come out. If they hadn't been released and hadn't been as bad as they were, we might not have gotten this new age of Silent Hill. It's kind of a backhanded compliment, but it's true. And it's also the only nice thing I have to say. As bad as they are, I'm glad I played these games, because it's nice to have this franchise completed. I love Silent Hill, and I'm glad that from here on out, I just get to play good Silent Hill games. The classics, the new ones,
You! What's going on? Where am I?
Looks like you found my general store.
Store?
I suppose
I thought
I'm
you were a
out of
mailman.